The organization Undoing Tax Abuse was formed to oppose the e-toll system, you'll remember. Now, yesterday, in his State of the Province address, Gauteng Premier David Makhura said that e-tolls have no future in the province. Well, joining us in studio to discuss this further is Outa's Transport Portfolio Manager, Rudy Heineke. Mr. Heineke, thank you very much for your time. I want to begin here before we get to Mr. Makhura's ambitions of even paying up if it means getting rid of the e-tolls. This is a fight that dates back, what, some 5 years ago?
Yes, even before it was officially implemented,
yeah.
The fight was there.
Now, just to bring the viewers up to speed, in March this year, SANROL suspended the collection of e-toll debt, and that included historic debt, including as well in there the summonses that were put aside for those who had received.
That's correct, Collie. And I think this is one of the pointers that shows us that, the scrapping of e-tolls are coming nearer by the day.
The Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, on this issue of the suspension of e-toll debt collection, very, very irritated. And I think he went as far as to say this will affect the country's credit rating. Where are processes in this regard as people who are following this matter closely?
I think if we look at the Minister of Finance's comments earlier this year, one must remember that we are in a high court litigation at this stage with SANROL regarding the e-tolls, where Treasury was, is now a party to the court case, and I think based on their arguments in court or on paper, that is why the minister said, listen, you cannot scrap or suspend the collection of e-tolls. We must carry on with regards to the papers that they laid before court.
The Democratic Alliance giving the Premier David Makhura up until August this year to come up with a concrete plan on how these e-tolls will finally be pushed aside, failing which they say a motion will be tabled by themselves to force Makhura into what they call an intergovernmental dispute that Makhura will then have to lodge with his national counterparts. Will this, in your view, be the final death knell in the e-toll saga?
I think, if we can just take one step back, I think it was in October last year, the presidency made an announcement that he is urgently looking at the e-toll matter. In January, February this year, it was announced that even if there is a summons and a judgment taken against you, the motorist cannot be blacklisted for SANROL debt. Then the announcement, as we said earlier, of the suspension of the collection of debts. Now the Premier making the same announcement as he has made, let's say, the past 5 years. But I think if we look at some other factors, we know and we can see that, like I said before, the scrapping of e-tolls are coming closer. First of all, there's no more summonses issued. Secondly, from our side, our supporters, we have our attorneys of there's about 2,200 cases that we are fighting at this stage on behalf of our supporters, out of the 3,000 cases that has been issued. Furthermore, if you look at the amount that that is costing to collect these debts, in the 2017-2018 financial year, ETC collected 722 million rand for SANROL, and the bill for SANROL to pay ETC for that was 643 million rand. So there's no money into it. And then the last thing is that the ETC contract is coming to an end this year. To our knowledge, there's no new tender out yet. In terms of the current contract, there must be a handover period of at least 12 months. So all these factors shows us that I think that the end of e-tolls are imminent.
As your organization says quite clearly, yours is to fight the abuse of taxpayers, or to fight the abuse against taxpayers' money. The question here is, if the Premier of the Gauteng province says we're willing to even pay up to see the back of these e-tolls, where does he get that money from? Where will he get that money from? Or are you looking at it in a different way altogether? Maybe I, as a layperson, am completely oblivious to what his plans are.
Let me tell you, the announcement of the Premier saying that he will use provincial money to settle part of the debt came quite as a surprise to us as well. We asked the same questions. Where do you get that? Is that in your budget? From where will you take it in your budget to pay e-tolls and e-toll debt? And then for a province to pay a SOE because somebody else is owing it money, that is quite surprising, and I don't know where he's going to get that money.
Interesting times indeed. Thank you very much. And just a final thought. I always ask this question when it comes to the e-tolls. The gantries, what becomes of them if indeed this does finally go away? I
think the best idea that I have for the gantries, every time when you pass it after e-tolls are scrapped, see it as a monument for effective civil intervention.
Interesting indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rudy Henneke, thank you very much for coming through. He is Outa's portfolio manager on transport.